Ah, the sounds of business. But what you can't hear is energy efficiency hard at work. At Georgia Power, we know that the easiest way to lower energy costs is taking simple steps to save energy, like opening the blinds during the day to take advantage of natural light and replacing lighting with LED fixtures and bulbs, a cost-effective and energy-efficient solution. Get savvy on saving energy with more energy efficiency tips, programs, and rebates. Visit georgiapower.com/commercial savings today.
This is Life Admin Life Hacks, a podcast that gives you techniques, tips and tools to tackle your life admin more efficiently, to save your time, your money, and improve your household harmony.
I'm Dinah Roberts, an operations manager, and it was my second child that pushed me into life admin overwhelm.
I'm Mia Northrop, a researcher and writer who found having kids an unfathomably immense shock to my hitherto organised life and manageable domestic responsibilities.
In this episode, we'll take you through all our top hacks for new parents.
Hello and welcome to Life Admin Life Hacks. We want to have a shout out to our long-time listeners. Hello, we hope you're doing well. And hello to those new to the show as well. Dinah and I are thrilled that you've made time for us today. And we want to thank also one of our latest reviewers, Joanna Pilates. I love the names that people put for their reviews. Joanna Pilates on Apple Podcasts gave us 5 stars and said, "This is the best admin advice. It simply changed my attitude to life admin. It saved me time and money. Buy the book. It's an excellent reference tool. And my life is finally getting sorted." Joanna Pilates, we're so thrilled for you. You've obviously found time to do Pilates, which is, there's a win right there. Thank you for leaving us that review.
So we love getting episode requests from listeners, and a little while ago we received a request from Cynthia, who's from Sydney, and that's what really has inspired this episode. So she wrote to us and she said she'd recently discovered our podcast and she's been enjoying the past episodes. She says, "I understand you're both mothers, and I'm wondering if you might do an episode on your experiences adjusting to life admin with a baby. I have a 6-month-old, and between the regular house upkeep and enjoying time with him, I sometimes struggle to prioritise all the other stuff." Well, you're certainly not alone there.
Oh, yeah. It is such an intense time. We are very happy to talk about this because, as Dinah said in her intro, it really was having kids that takes life admin up a level. So, we will talk about this today. We also want to acknowledge that we've got a few other kid-related episodes if you want to dive deep on this. In episode 26, we talk about optimizing kid admin. In episodes 45 and 51, Tracy Spicer and Michael Gross, parenting expert, respectively, talk about upskilling your kids to contribute more at home. And in episode 54, we talk about daycare and school transitions and how to prepare for them. But in this episode, we're really going to focus on, when you're preparing to have a baby, when you're pregnant and it's about to happen, and then that first year where, life is never the same.
And I think, we talked a bit before about how life admin explodes, but when we did that survey a little while ago, we found that parents do about 1/3 more life admin than non-parents. And when you think about it, okay, all of a sudden you add parenting responsibilities to your life, and on top of that, your life admin increases by 1/3. So no wonder everyone feels super overwhelmed.
That's it. So before you have a kid, you've just got ample leisure time. You've got physical energy, mental energy. You might have multiple incomes coming into the household. You've got more physical space. You've got more head space. And, life admin's either done independently or it's designed around 2 people. Afterwards, your leisure time plummets. You've got less physical energy, less mental energy. Your income might have dropped if one or both of you have left the paid work for a time. You have more expenses and you've got less space. And the life admin increases because now you have to accommodate another person. And the housework, explodes as well. So if you think about that little Venn diagram that we talk about that's encompassing all of your domestic responsibilities, you've got one little circle that's housework, which is traditionally the cleaning, the cooking, the laundry. You've got one little circle that's life admin, which is all that personal and household admin. And then you have this whole new circle of parenting, and your life admin circle and your housework circle both got bigger. So it's hard. In Cynthia's little request, she said, look, how do you prioritize all the other stuff? And it's worth remembering that prioritizing is really about deciding what you won't do. and getting clear about what's truly urgent or important and letting go of the rest. So I would take the all out of prioritizing all the other stuff, because having a kid is definitely an exercise in trying to let go of some things and getting crystal clear about what does deserve your energy and your attention and your time.
I guess one of the most important things to be thinking about when you're becoming a parent, or if you already are a parent, is to think about this concept of the mental load. And I think that Emma cartoon, if you haven't already seen it, make sure you look it up. She's a French comic and she created this comic about the mental load. And it really does, particularly for there's a partnership, if you're in a different sex couple and in the traditional role of a woman who might take a much longer parental leave from work, what tends to happen is that you're at home and you're doing a lot of the parenting, and then you take on a lot of that mental, the thinking, the planning, the scheduling to make everything happen. So it's really important to really think about starting as you mean to go on. So setting up those systems very early on that allow you to share that load. It is this huge shock to realize this new level of responsibility and attention you have to give to your child. And all of a sudden, there's this personal time shrinking. So really starting as you mean to go on is incredibly important. So thinking about how you're going to have those conversations about sharing the load, because this is a conversation that will keep happening throughout this child's life, and also getting in place those foundational life admin systems that really make it much easier to share a lot of those tasks.
And that conversation is, you have it before the kid comes along, and you'll have it pretty soon afterwards too, once you realise, oh my God, is this what life is like now? And then you keep having to have that conversation, because as the baby develops, its needs change. It's going to sleep more. It's going to, there'll be eating, there'll be playtime. Suddenly it has a social life, its own extracurricular stuff. And as it changes, as it goes through these little developmental milestones, your amount of time and attention that you need to dedicate to it changes, which means you have less time or more time for other things. Then, if you're thinking about going back to the paid work, again, your life is going to change. You have less time. Your responsibilities will be sitting elsewhere. So you'll need to have the conversation again, pretty much every quarter, every 6 months, every year, for the rest of its life while it's living with you. You need to keep having the conversation. It doesn't go away. Hopefully you just get really good at it at some stage. But it is a constant vigilant act to be talking about how you are sharing the load, so that there's that feeling of equity in the partnership and things feel fair. And at the end of the day, it really goes down to supporting your well-being, because, it's disheartening how many conversations we still have with new mums where they are shouldering everything. They're stressed out, they're tired, they're resentful, they're getting angry. They can be spiraling into anxiety. You can get very depressed because it can be very isolating and exhausting. So do take it seriously and make it a priority to start with those conversations.
So shall we get started and talk about some of the administrative tasks you might want to think about when you're having or planning a family, Mia?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because when you read baby books or you talk to experts in the area, like maternal health nurses and people who are supporting you through your pregnancy, conventional wisdom recommends sort of focusing discussions on housework, like how you're going to share the cleaning and the cooking and the shopping and the laundry, and having discussions around parenting. So you might have discussions around, childcare and who's going to help feed and clothe and do the nappies and give the bath and get them to sleep, and who's going to take them for walks. You probably have a conversation around paid care, like whether you want to have a nanny or daycare, or have relatives or family daycare involved. You want to have a talk about parenting styles and your values and principles, and also how you're going to have some time as a couple and individual time and family time. They're all the things that very normally get talked about before you have a baby. But as we mentioned, there's this third dimension of domestic life, which is all the life admin stuff. And there is definitely a lot of paperwork and admin to do before the child is even born.
Yeah, and I mean, my kids are in high school and I do more life admin for them than I do for myself. So it's definitely something that doesn't go away. So really getting on top of it, having great systems and figuring out how to share the load is important. So if we think about right even before the baby's born, one of the things that really surprised me was finding an obstetrician, like that was a life admin task in and of itself, and it wasn't simple. Was that a simple thing for you?
Oh gosh. I asked friends, who did you use? Who did you like? And I just went to one that was close to what someone recommended. So yeah, I did decide to go into the private system to have a baby because I was terrified of the whole thing, and I wanted to be there's a maternity hospital that's near where I live, and I wanted to just go there because I was familiar. I'd visited friends there, and it gave me reassurance. And I had private health insurance, and I thought, this is what I've been paying for. I'm going to use it. So I just asked some friends who they had used at that hospital, and ended up going in and meeting with them, and off I went. But obviously, if you're going to the public hospital and through the public system where you have very few costs, you still need to understand how it works. Usually you'll go in and you'll see a doctor or midwife, and yeah, you need to get familiar with what kinds of records you're going to be keeping, all the appointments. There's a lot of appointments, and they get more frequent as you get closer to having the baby. So having that digital calendar in place to schedule all of that, so your partner, if you're partnered up, can come along with you. They're all really good things to organise.
And I think it can be kind of a time-consuming process, like exploring all of those different options of obstetricians and midwives and understanding what the options are out there, and then making sure that you select the one that works for you. So it is something to get onto and research quite early and ask lots of questions and be curious about what your options are and understand the implications. So certainly know that sometimes if you go in the public system, you might not be able to choose who you'll use, who you're seeing, and you might have longer waiting times, but that might be fine for you versus, some of those other decisions you talked about. So really thinking about deciding what's important to you.
I had that thing where, I went and had my obstetrician, and I saw her for 9 months, and then on the day of the birth, she was unavailable, and some stranger delivered the baby. So, I you never know what's going to happen on the day.
No, you don't. Okay, so if you've figured out where you're going to have the baby, hopefully, then something that people do quite early these days is often book in for childcare. So reserve a place, particularly if it's a high in demand community centre they're trying to get their child on the waiting list for. So you need to be mindful that other people are putting their children's name down before they're born, and so you kind of have to match what they're doing if you want to secure a place in the centre that's perhaps most convenient or most desirable for you.
Yeah, this is not something to do 2 months before you're returning to work. I remember rocking up to the daycare centre that was near us, like heavily pregnant, and having to write, baby Northrop on the form, thinking it was ridiculous, but being so relieved because when I did go back to work, the place was ready for her. And I've had other friends who are ready to go back to work, and they're literally scrounging around trying to find somewhere to send their kid. So hopefully you don't live somewhere where that's the case, but if you do, start visiting those childcare centres and filling out the forms.
And I also think it's really important to think about early on understanding your financial situation. So having a think about how long you might be wanting to take off work, understanding what parental leave you might be eligible from your employer or from Centrelink, and really thinking about how that budget's going to work so that you can work out how much you might want to save during those months while you're pregnant, so you're confident about how much time you can take off and how your budget's going to work while perhaps you reduce down to one income.
And obviously there's, in Australia, Services Australia, you get paid parental leave as well. But that's on top of any parental leave your employer might pay. But that doesn't kick in, obviously, until you've had the baby, and you can't apply until you've registered the birth.
So something else that I guess we're both huge advocates of that we recommend you really think about early on is meal planning, and thinking about perhaps even before the baby's born, having some meal preparation done so you can stash away some meals in the freezer, so that makes it much easier for those first few weeks, which are likely to be very sleep deprived. Was that something you did, Mia?
I remember eating slab after slab of lasagna and being so damn happy every time I got it out of the freezer in the morning. Zapped it in the microwave. So my ex-husband makes an amazing lasagna, and he made a lot of it, and I lived on it. I lived on it for about 6 weeks, I reckon. And then anyone else who said, do you want any food? I was like, lasagna, bring me lasagna.
That's so funny.
How about you?
I think that because when I had my first baby, do you remember this? I actually was living with my parents you remember that? Because I
No,
moved back from overseas and I stayed with my parents. So I was basically being looked after by my mum for the first 6 weeks.
I
So
thought you were in like somewhere in the UAE.
yeah, no, so I came back to Australia and I had the baby here, and then I stayed with my parents for the first 6 weeks of her life. So I basically just got waited on hand and foot. And as much as that's kind of weird, spending the first 6 weeks of your child's life with your parents, highly recommend it
It's
from
so,
a meal cooking point of view, particularly because
yeah.
my mum's a midwife. So I had like, good quality help at hand. So highly recommend.
Well, that's how it used to happen in the olden days. I wish that we had that idea of confinement where you just stayed home and family looked after you for 40 days. That's how it should be. That's still how it should be.
So I think that the key advice here is just plan to be sleep deprived. So think about what you can do to make those first few weeks easier when it comes to food, which is really important. Another thing to really start to lean into is checklists. And I think this is very early on where you can establish a hospital checklist of the things you might want to be taking to the hospital with you, and start to think about other checklists you might want to establish. And again, making sure that you've got the right app that you can share with your partner. So if things happen a bit sooner than you thought, if you've got a checklist that you can both get your hands on really easily and that you can find and add to things as you think, add items to it as you think of it, it's a really good way as starting that start as you mean to go on.
I'm thinking of all the sort of the baby forum and the baby book apps as well, like the what you can expect when you're expecting, and all of those places often have their own apps with their own lists. But yes, it can be a good habit to start your own checklists in an app that you can use into the future. So keepsake system. This is something that also starts very early on. I still have this grossed my children out amazingly. I still have the pregnancy tests of when I found out I was pregnant with both of them. They still have the little pink line, well, 12 years later.
Really? That's so weird.
Yeah. I showed them that and they just were like, oh my God, Mum, TMI. But, you start collecting the ultrasounds and there's a lot to keep on top of. So having a keepsake system, which is either going to be a box or hanging files or whatever works for you, but somewhere to start storing all of this stuff into prosperity.
Yeah, and have somewhere where you can, it's really convenient to add things to. So don't stow it
Yeah.
at the top of a cupboard where you have to stand on a ladder to add things to it. You're going to be adding to it frequently, particularly over those, first few months. So really make sure it's somewhere that you can easily add things to it so that you don't lose them or, they don't sort of clutter up your home.
You've got the little bracelet that the kid will wear in the hospital. You might want to keep a little bit of umbilical cord that falls off one day. Whatever takes your fancy. Let's talk about shopping. Let's talk about all the gear that you need, Dinah.
Yeah, so I guess that's another checklist that you might want to establish is as you're reading and talking to people, put down a checklist of all the things you might want to get. And then you can start to think about, what you might be able to borrow from other people, what you might be able to get secondhand, and also things that you might want to buy new, and making a plan to do that over time because there's quite a lot of stuff you're going to need. So you don't want to have to do it in one big bang.
Yeah, we're talking about the clothes. We're talking about little toys, like the little things they chew on, the little mobiles they stare at, bedding, and all the equipment, the cots, the child carriers, the harriers that you wear, the car seats, the high chairs. It's amazing. I didn't have a checklist for this. I had a spreadsheet, Dinah. And I don't really like spreadsheets, but this warranted a spreadsheet because there was a lot of stuff. And I was lucky that a friend shared a spreadsheet that she'd been gifted by someone else. And I literally shared, it was like a Google Sheet spreadsheet. I can't tell you how many people I've shared that document with. I think it's made certain rounds of parts of Melbourne. It's the same spreadsheet. It has all of the things. Notes of people trying different brands of things and how many to buy. Like how many of those bluey sheets do you put on your nappy change table, and how many of those little cloths do you need to wipe up all the spit up? Like it was just so useful to have that and just work my way through.
Definitely. And I do think it's an area where often you do get given things by other people. And I think it can be easy actually then to end up with too much stuff. And certainly I had that experience of being given lots of things and then I ended up with so much And really thinking about how many you really need and sort of decluttering early so that you don't have so many, size 000 jumpsuits that they sort of balloon into your house. You really, if you've got a checklist and you think, oh, actually I need, 10 of those, pick the 10 nicest ones and hand on the rest right from the beginning so you're not overloaded with too many things.
Yeah.
A couple of practical things you might also want to think about before the baby's born or early on is thinking about getting your will updated. So if you haven't got a will, you might want to get one so that you put the financial security of your child, but also at that time think about, who might be the guardian of my child should my partner and I both pass away in that event. And that's kind of an interesting conversation to have when you start to think about who you might trust, but also who might be capable, who's in the right season of their life that they could take on the responsibility of another child.
It is can be a tricky conversation. We have a separate episode on that to talk about, the different elements that you have to consider and how to find a lawyer to do that for you. But it is pretty important. The other thing on that same kind of vein is to think about your insurances, life insurance, income protection insurance, especially if you have debt, if you have a mortgage, if something happens to you or you can't, if you pass away or you can't earn an income and there's long-term debt and someone has to look after the kid and all the kids' expenses, that's where insurances can be really important. So step up and have a look at whether yours need to be updated or if you don't have it, whether it's something that would give you peace of mind.
And finally,
and then something impractical but highly fun is
the
baby moon.
A baby moon. I do think it's one of those things that it can be easy to actually not plan it because you have to really fly before, do you have to fly before 32 weeks? I can't remember.
Yeah. So this is a little holiday that you have before the baby comes because you're recognizing that after the baby comes, it ain't going to be a holiday.
So where did you go? Did you have a baby moon?
I didn't for my first baby. Actually, as I said that, I'm like, did I have a baby moon? We went on holiday, but it wasn't actually a baby moon. We went to China. You know what? I had to go to a conference. I'm just remembering now. I had to speak at a conference in China and I was 5 months pregnant. It was good to get away, but it wasn't exactly a very relaxing trip, but it was nice to get away. Before I had my second child, I had an actual baby moon where I went on holiday and just chilled by a pool for 3 nights and ate club sandwiches and watched TV and had room service. I had my second baby when my daughter was 18 months old and I'd gone back to work and I just needed 3 days by myself to just be by myself and not have to run after anybody. I just needed to sleep and it was great. I came back feeling very refreshed and ready for the next ride on the roller coaster. What did you do?
So before our first child was born, we went on a trip to Turkey. So I think that's why I was thinking we had to fly reasonably early because, it was international travel. And we really sort of deliberately chose that as a place we'd been really wanting to go and thinking, it's probably not the best destination to take a baby or a toddler. So it was really, knocking something off the list that was going to be fun with a bit of relaxation and a bit of adventure. And we did actually also slip in trips before our second child was born. We disappeared off to Jordan, knowing that taking one child to Jordan was going to be doable, but a second child, maybe not so much. But, really planning that in advance to make sure that we did it before I was too advanced in the pregnancy was really important.
And I love all the photos of you where your daughter's just strapped to your chest in every single photo. You look really happy.
We had great trips. With one child, super easy. Once we had the second child, all of a sudden I realised, this is not as easy as it was with one kid. When you're man on man, it's really tricky.
Yeah, I'm very admiring of people who travel with young children. I couldn't do it. I was just a nervous wreck. Anywho, moving quite along. So let's fast forward. You've had the baby. It's 6 months in and you're in this is my life now. How do I do all of the things that need to be done? Because it is such a intense period. It's truly one of those things that you can't really imagine how it's going to be until it happens. And then you're like, this is what everyone was kind of talking about. Where should we start, Dinah?
Yeah, let's kick off with schedules because I think that that's kind of something that's really underpins in terms of inability to plan, but an importance of having a rhythm to your week. So kind of getting that balance right.
Yeah. And here we're not talking about like routines for the baby, like schedules for the baby, where, you know, some of those books, it's like sleep at this time and then feed them for 35 minutes and then do this. We're not talking about baby schedules. We're talking about life admin and household admin schedules. So it's useful to actually distinguish here between like a schedule for the week where, you know, like this is the day that laundry happens, this is the day where I meal plan, this is when grocery shopping has to happen, and just knowing that overall rhythm. And then the routine for the day for yourself, like when are you going to shower, when are you going to meditate, or whatever it is you're trying to do, when you're trying to squeeze in some exercise, having a think about having that kind of structure. So you don't have to make a million decisions every day. You've kind of got a week that's planned out that has all those foundational tasks so that you can just operate a little bit on automatic pilot. And it's funny because often when you go on maternity leave, if you've been in paid work before, then your day sort of has a bit of structure around it because you've got to get yourself to work and then it'll be in work mode and then you come back. And then when you go on maternity leave, it's like, you know, all of the normal structure that work once provided is gone. And then once you actually return to work, whether it's part-time or full-time, those routines and schedules, if they really kind of need to be highly structured to support that smooth functioning of the household because there is so much that needs to be squeezed into each day or the week. And then as the baby develops, your routine will change, you know, as they need to eat and sleep and play at different times. It'll change from month to month. But having that shared digital calendar with your partner across your household so everybody can see where everyone needs to be, what needs to happen on certain days, is going to be a really great framework for you to lean on.
Yeah, definitely. And really starting to have that option of being able to schedule in some time and your partner understanding, oh, you know, this is going to be my turn to look after the child. And so therefore really getting that established early. Again, coming back to my favorite things, starting as you mean to go on. We've already talked about checklists a bit about before the baby was born, but, you know, checklists will continue to become your friend. They are great to have as a list of things, like, for example, a checklist for leaving the house so that you don't forget the important dummy or the formula or the, you know, 3 spare nappies or whatever it is. And if you've got those checklists well established and your partner can access them, that makes it way easier for you to have that freedom to leave the house without having to feel like you need to give a complicated list of instructions about what needs to happen when you're not there.
I had so many packing checklists. It was like I had a checklist for what to pack in like the bag. What's the bag that you carry around called? You know,
Baby bag, is it?
the
Nappy
baby
bag. Nappy
bag.
bag?
Oh God, I had a total mental blank there. I had a list for that because it's like, oh, I need to take my breast pump, or I need to take, you know, it's just once they start eating, there's all the little bits and bobs. It just the creams, so many creams.
Yeah.
I had a checklist for if I was going, you know, if someone was looking after the baby, checklist to what to pack to go to daycare, checklist for what they need to go for swimming lessons, just list after list after list. And then there's also the to-do lists because, you know, the sleep deprivation, you're not thinking particularly clearly for some time. And I found it even more important to capture things and write them down. Otherwise, I had no chance of remembering them.
Yeah, having those checklists, the to-do list, have your system optimized and shared. You know, that's something that will continue on. I've just established a new checklist for my son's just started a new sport. He's 13. Now we have a checklist for that, which I share with him. So, you know, I think if you can establish those systems, they'll stand you in good stead for many years to come.
I attempted to do that with my daughter recently, a checklist for her to get out of the house in the morning. And I did it on my phone and I sent it to her. But one of the things that she forgets to look at is her phone. So we went to bed.
So another important thing to really get on top of is decluttering. So I think this is where developing habits to declutter as you go very early will stand you in good stead, because the reality is your child is going to grow out of things, the toys are going to, you know, move on. And so there is going to be a lot of things that you need to either put away if you're planning to have more children, or give away if you're not planning to have other children. So knowing where you're going to stash it.
And it happens astoundingly fast. Like, you know, when you have a baby, 1 week to the next, they'll grow out of literally all of their clothes. They'll be into the next size. So you need to wash those items, bag them, scribble what size they're on, and know where that's going. As you said, either having a cupboard in your house where you can start relegating this stuff, having a favourite op shop where you can dump it, have some friends or family who you know will be appreciative of those hand-me-downs, and just get that little decluttering machine going. Meal planning, if you didn't embrace it before the baby, you'll be embracing it now. Especially once your baby moves on to solids and you need to think about what you can cook that's going to feed the grown-ups as well as get pureed or mushed into something that the baby could eat as well. And again, it allows you to share that responsibility. Everyone knows what's happening for dinner at different nights of the week. Someone else can shop for that, and then other, multiple people can prepare that. Bulk cooking is your friend. Having some time during the week or on the weekend to make a massive batch of something. And I did this for my lunches. Actually, as I'm saying that, I was going to say I did massive batches of dal until I realised, because I was breastfeeding my daughter, that was having all sorts of revolting consequences for her. But making big batches of whatever it is that can sustain you for your lunches or snacks or for dinner or whatever it might be, it's just little things that are going to help you save time. And also batch cooking snacks for the kids. Like, I feel like I started feeding my kids little banana cakes from the minute they could eat solids, and I've been batch cooking banana cakes every other week for their entire lives. They're very sick of banana cake, but I love it.
I mean, it's been a massive time saver for me. And I think it's also one of those things where if you don't want to do the grocery shopping, you can split those duties. Like, someone can do the meal planning, someone can do the grocery shopping, someone can do the cooking. So really thinking about which part of the job do you hate the least and seeing if you can negotiate to keep that part of the job and share the other parts with your partner.
And also online shopping. It's worth mentioning the online shopping, just setting up those master lists. With some of the online stores now, you can have like a subscription for the delivery, which means you can get it delivered as much as you want, and it just costs one flat monthly fee. Like, sign up for that just to save yourself another trip to the shops. Trips to the shops with small babies can be very traumatic. Get it shipped in if you can. And also the meal kits, the Hello Freshes, the Marley Spoons, the Everett Cakes. I have vouchers for all of that stuff if anyone wants one. Get onto one of them. That'll help you out a couple of nights a week or as many nights a week as you want as well. And now most of them extend into supplying ready-to-eat meals and soups and all sorts of extra bits, fruit boxes, all of that stuff that can be delivered, free up your time.
So another thing to really think about, and if you can afford it, is to think about, okay, particularly if those early years of having a baby and a toddler where you're in a really season of your life's very busy, thinking about what you might be able to outsource. So perhaps you haven't had a cleaner in the past. It might be time, if you can afford it, to think about getting one. Can be a great thing to ask for as a gift if you've got, you're leaving work, like maybe you can get a voucher for, a clean, even just one clean in those first few weeks of a baby's life can be a really sort of a godsend. But you can also think about asking for help. So what tasks might you be able to get other people to help you with when you're having that busy season of life, around maybe walking the dog or, some things like that, which might really tip you into overwhelm.
Yeah. And the final thing we want to talk about is your social life, because friends are medicine. It is a strange period of time where your social life kind of shrinks in one direction, because you might not see all of your old friends as much unless they've all got children the same age as yours. And you start hanging out with a whole bunch of other people, usually people who live close to you that you've been plonked in a mother's group with, and you all have babies the same age. And it's a strange transition as you realise you have less time to socialise the way you used to, the things you used to do, but you're seeing more of other people that you might necessarily have a lot in common with, sort of those friendships of proximity. It's one of those things where you have to be quite deliberate to maintain friendships with other people, because your life has changed and you might not be in the same season, in the same gear at that time. So it's really a moment to think about what we talk about in the book is friends and social activities, where there's like a people priority, where it's all about hanging out with certain people that you want to see, versus an event priority, which is all about activities you want to do and you don't really mind that much who you do it with. So with people priority, you might just want to hang out with Caro because she's fun and you don't care what you do. With an event priority, it's like, I want to go to the movies. I miss going to the cinema and I really don't care who comes with me. So these are the sort of things you need to learn about yourself and think about how are you going to accommodate both of those things?
And it's so important to really plan for it, to make time for it, and to think about how much you want to prioritize as, social life as a family. So you and your partner and your child or children versus the things you want to try and do on your own, and getting that balance right and being realistic about, you don't want to be out 7 nights a week. That's just not going to happen. Being realistic, and when you do get to go out, it's precious. So you really want to make the most of it. So really thinking about using that time really deliberately to spend time with the people that are most important to you.
And this is where, the babysitters become crucial, when you can start thinking about who in your circle can babysit, who in your family, babysitting for other people in your mother's group and doing that sort of reciprocal thing. I had a babysitter that I lined up for like a year in advance. We set out all the dates once a month so that we could book restaurants and prepare and be a bit organised about it. Otherwise, it was really hard. It was really hard to sort of to find a babysit when we needed it, when we realised, we have a window, we should go and do something, and then not be able to find a sitter. So that was a nice way. And something to really look forward to as well. So we've covered a lot of ground here. That idea that the days are long but the years go fast when you have a small child is very true. And it can feel really intense trying to squeeze in so much. But the first thing we would say is just bring some self-compassion to the situation. Realize that you're in a very special season of life, and that the time with your kid is incredibly precious when they're that little. So you just let go of the life admin that you can. There's a whole bunch of stuff that can be parked. There's a whole bunch of stuff that can happen less frequently. Hopefully you can still embrace that hour of power to do the things that are actually important and urgent. But there are a whole other bunch of things that can simply wait.
So hope you've enjoyed this episode. We hope that these hacks will make dealing with your life admin as a parent that little bit easier. Our top hacks are: have the conversations with your partner about sharing the load. This is going to be a regular thing, so get good at having that conversation. Lean into schedules and routines so you've got a good rhythm in your household and things hum along nicely. And finally, embrace decluttering and meal planning. We think they have the biggest impact on an ongoing basis for family harmony.
Thanks for listening. Show notes for this episode are available at lifeadminlifehacks.com. And if you're a fan, please subscribe and share the love and tell a friend, or review us in your podcasting app. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
It's Jeep 4x4 season. Make your next adventure epic and hurry in now for great deals. Now well-qualified returning FCA lessees get a low-mileage lease on the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo 4x2 for $369 a month for 24 months with $2,999 due at signing. Tax, title, license extra. No security deposit required. Call 1-888-925-JEEP for details. Requires dealer contribution on lease through Ally Financial. Current lease must end by 6/3/24. Extra charge for miles over 20,000. Residency restrictions apply. Take delivery by 5/31/23. Jeep is a registered trademark.